At 68, I was thrown out of the home I built with my own hands. My son changed the locks and said, "Dad, you don't live here anymore." My daughter-in-law dropped $50 at my feet and whispered, "You'll figure it out." I walked away with nothing but that money and my memories. 8 years later, my granddaughter searched my name on Google for a school project and uncovered the truth. That night, my phone rang 47 times. Before I tell you what happened, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe if you believe family should protect the most vulnerable above all else. Then tell me in the comments, what's the hardest choice you've ever made for someone you love? This story is based on real events, but names, places, and details have been changed. The phone vibrated so violently against the rough wooden desk that the blueprints beneath it shifted. I watched the screen light up for the 47th time in 18 minutes. Unknown number, same unknown number over and over like someone hammering nails into silence. I was 68 years old. I had built an $85 million construction empire from $50 and 8 years of patience. People did not call me 47 times unless something had broken a foundation, a contract, or a lie. The office was dark, except for the drafting lamp. Third floor of the WH Construction Building in Houston, Texas. Friday night, 9:47 p.m. Most men my age were home with family. I had blueprints and cold coffee. The bridge design spread before me needed another load-bearing column on the eastern span. I had been studying the stress calculations when the calls started. I let the phone ring out. 47 calls in 18 minutes. Whoever this was, they were desperate or stupid. Maybe both. I picked up, heavy breathing on the other end. Not the breathing of exertion, the breathing of fear or grief or both. Then a voice, young and trembling, spoke one word that I had not heard in 8 years. "Grandpa." The word hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I said nothing. My calloused fingers gripped the phone hard enough that the case creaked. "Grandpa, it's me. It's Vivian. Vivian Mercer." 17 years old now, though the last time I heard her voice, she was 9. I did the math automatically, the way engineers do. 8 years, 3 months, 12 days since I walked out of the house. I built with $50 in my pocket, and her mother's handprint still burning on my face. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me." She continued, words tumbling out fast, like she was afraid I would hang up. "I know it's been so long, and I don't even know if this is the right number, but I found you. I had a homework assignment. 12th grade. We're supposed to find someone inspiring in the industry we want to work in, and I picked construction because I like how things fit together. And I typed your name into the search bar just to see if maybe somehow you were still alive, and the Forbes article came up." She paused to breathe. I heard the tears in her voice, held back, but close to breaking through. "It said you built an $85 million company from nothing. It said you started with $50. I recognized the name immediately. Harlan Mercer." "That's you. That's my grandpa." I had not heard that word grandpa in 8 years. 8 years of silence. 8 years of rebuilding. And now one trembling voice threatened to collapse the walls I had built between past and present. "Grandpa, is that really you?" I let 15 seconds of silence settle between us. Long enough for her to understand that words were not free. Long enough for her to remember that 8 years is a long time to forget someone exists. "Yes, Vivian." I said finally, my voice calm and measured, carrying the weight of a 68-year-old man who survived ruin. "It is me." She exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years. Maybe she had. "I can't believe it. I can't believe I found you. I thought maybe you were dead. Mom and Dad said you didn't want anything to do with us anymore, that you left and never looked back, but I didn't believe them. I remembered you. I remembered how you used to show me how to measure things, how you let me hold the level when you were building the deck, how you said I had steady hands. Steady hands. I remembered saying that. I remembered her at 7 years old holding a carpenter's level against a 2x4 tongue sticking out in concentration. I also remembered her at 9 years old, a shadow in the second-story window, watching her mother pull $50 from her purse and slap me across the face with it, while my son stood behind her arms crossed, saying nothing. Why are you calling me Vivienne? The question came out colder than I intended. Not cold enough to make her hang up, but cold enough to test her. I wanted to know if you were okay. I wanted to hear your voice. I wanted to tell you that I don't believe what they said about you. What did they say? That you were bitter. That you couldn't handle getting old. That you wanted money from them, and when they said no, you walked out and tried to destroy Dad's business out of spite. I smiled in the darkness. The story had evolved over 8 years. Gotten smoother, more believable. My son had always been good at polishing lies until they looked like truth. And what do you believe? I asked. I believe the Forbes article. I believe you built something from nothing. I believe $50 is not a lot of money to start with. She knew. The way she said $50 with weight, with hesitation, she knew. Why would a 17-year-old girl raised to believe her grandfather abandoned her suddenly reach out after discovering his wealth? The answer sat in that silence, like a stone. I leaned back in my chair. The leather creaked. Outside, Houston traffic hummed 3 stories below. I could end this call right now. I could tell her I had nothing to say to her, that 8 years of silence was a choice, that some bridges burn and stay burned. But I did not. Forjana, I said, voice even and quiet. Do you know why I had $50? Silence. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I counted them the way I counted load-bearing tolerances, the way I counted every dollar I clawed back from nothing, the way I counted the days since my wife died. And my son showed me exactly who he was. 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 8 seconds. The silence stretched long enough for me to understand. She knew about the $50. She knew about the slap. She knew about the eviction. I had seen a shadow in the second-story window that day, a 9-year-old girl watching her mother slap her grandfather across the face while her father stood silent, complicit, letting it happen. That shadow was Vivienne. And if she knew the truth 8 years ago, why was she calling me now? She did not answer the question. After 10 seconds, Vivienne whispered, I have to go. And the line went dead. How long does it take a desperate man to call his father for money after discovering the father is worth $85 million? I set the phone down and returned to the bridge blueprints. The eastern span still needed reinforcement. The load calculations were off by 3%, small enough that most engineers would miss it, large enough to cause catastrophic failure in 20 years. I corrected the math with a mechanical pencil, precise strokes on graph paper. An engineer knows when pressure will cause a structure to crack. You apply force, measure deflection, calculate the point of failure. Human beings are no different. Brent had just learned his father was alive and wealthy. Vivienne would tell him about the call. She was 17, still living under his roof, still dependent on him. And Brent would do the math. $85 million. 8 years of silence. One daughter who just made contact. I looked at the clock. 10:07 p.m. I gave him 3 hours, maybe 4 if Roxanne had to rehearse him first. I did not leave the office. I made fresh coffee in the small break room on the 3rd floor, returned to my desk, and continued working. The bridge design consumed another hour. After that, I reviewed contractor bids for a commercial foundation job in Dallas. The numbers told stories if you knew how to read them. This subcontractor was padding materials costs that one was using cheaper rebar than specified. Numbers do not lie. People do. Midnight came and went. I sat in the dark office with only the drafting lamp creating a pool of yellow light on the desk. Houston traffic thinned to occasional headlights 3 stories below. The building was empty. The cleaning crew had finished at 9. I waited with the patience I had learned in 8 years of rebuilding. Concrete does not cure faster because you want it to. Steel does not bend because you will it. You wait. You measure. You build. 12:50 a.m. I finished the coffee, now cold, started a new pot. 12:53 a.m. The phone rang. I looked at the caller ID. Brent Mercer. I let it ring twice more before answering. I did not say hello. Dad. Brent Mercer's voice came through the phone, 42 years old. My only son, and the man who had sold my home out from under me 8 years ago, while I sat in a funeral home making arrangements for his mother. Dad, I'm sorry. I know I messed up. I know it's been too long and I should have called sooner, but Roxanne, she forced me into it. She told me you were dangerous, that you were trying to destroy us. I believed her because I was grieving Mom and I wasn't thinking straight. His voice cracked on the word Mom. Perfect timing, perfect delivery. He paused for 3 seconds, long enough to suggest emotion, short enough to maintain momentum. I've been looking for you for years, Dad. I hired investigators, but you disappeared completely. When Vivian found that article tonight. God, Dad, we need to talk. I need to explain what happened. I need you to understand. 90 seconds of rehearsed emotion. I counted them the way I counted rebar placements, concrete mix ratios, load-bearing tolerances. He had prepared this speech probably with Roxanne standing beside him, coaching every pause and inflection. I said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Let him hear how empty his performance sounded when it landed on stone. Dad, are you there? Please don't hang up. I know you're angry. You have every right to be angry. But I'm your son. We're family. That has to mean something. What does a father owe a son who stole his home while he mourned his wife? What does blood mean when it has been spent like currency? I picked up the mechanical pencil, rolled it between my fingers. The weight was familiar, comforting. I had held tools for 46 years, measuring tapes, levels, pencils, hammers. I understood tools. I understood leverage. Dad, please, say something, anything. Just let me know you're listening. I set the pencil down with deliberate care, point first in the metal tray beside the blueprints. The tiny click echoed in the silent office. How much do you need? 4 words. Calm, measured, precise. I cut straight through the performance to the foundation beneath the greed, the desperation. The reason he was calling at 1 in the morning after 8 years of silence. The pause lasted 3 seconds. I heard him recalculate, adjust strategy mid-conversation. When he spoke again, the emotion was gone. His voice was flat, almost businesslike. UI $1.2 million. My company is facing a temporary cash flow. I hung up. The click of the disconnect was clean and final. I laid the phone down on the blueprint of the half-finished bridge screen side down so the light would not distract me. $1.2 million. Not a round number like 1 million. Not a desperate number like 2 million. Exactly 1.2 million, specific enough to sound calculated, researched, justified. He had done the math before calling, probably had spreadsheets ready to show me financial projections, demonstrating how the loan would be repaid. Loan. He would call it a loan. I pulled a fresh sheet of graph paper from the drawer. At the top, in precise block letters, I wrote Project Timeline. For 40 years, I had built bridges, overpasses, structures designed to bear impossible weight. I understood foundations, load distribution, stress points, the exact place to apply pressure to bring a structure down safely and completely. Now I would build something different, a structure designed not to hold weight, but to collapse it. I drew a horizontal line across the page. On the far left, I marked Day 1. On the far right, completion. In between empty space, waiting to be filled with careful planning, precise execution, perfect timing. An engineer does not begin construction without blueprints. You survey the site first. You understand what you are building, on what you are building for, and what you are building against. I needed to understand exactly what had happened 8 years ago. Not the version I remembered through grief and shock, but the mechanical truth: who did what, when, how much, and why. I needed to know what Brent had stolen, how he had stolen it, and who had helped him. Then I would build. In 40 years, I had constructed over 60 structures across Texas. Tonight, I began designing the 61st. This one would not be made of steel and concrete. It would be made of patience, evidence, and perfect timing. And when it was finished, my son would understand exactly what he had built his life upon: a foundation made of lies that could not hold weight. Before I could build the structure that would destroy my son, I had to understand the foundation he built his theft upon. 3 days after I buried my wife, my son walked into my dining room carrying a stack of papers and the beginning of my destruction. March 2016. The funeral flowers were still on the altar, white lilies browning at the edges, filling the house with sick, sweet decay. I sat at the dining table where my wife and I had eaten breakfast for 38 years. The doctor had given me pills, small white tablets that made the world soft and distant, like watching life through frosted glass. I could barely remember the funeral. Faces, handshakes, my son's arm around my shoulders. 42 years of marriage ended in a coffin and a prescription bottle that promised manageable pain. Brent let himself in with his key. "Dad, you awake?" I was awake. I was also not awake. The pills created a strange in-between state where I could function, but not think, move, but not decide. "Hey, Dad." Brent sat across from me with a leather folder. "I need you to sign some paperwork. Mom's insurance stuff and retirement documents, estate things. We need to get this handled." Behind him stood Roxanne Mercer, his wife, 32 years old, dark hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a black sweater. She said nothing, just stood silent and still as stone, the architect of every document Brent carried. I learned later she had worked as a paralegal, knew exactly which forms to forge, which signatures to copy, which loopholes to exploit. Brent was the delivery boy. She was the engineer. "Where do I sign?" My voice sounded hollow. "Right here, Dad." He opened the folder, pulled out the first document. Power of attorney in capital letters at the top. "What is this for?" "Just in case you need me to handle bank stuff while you're recovering. Makes it easier. I can pay bills, manage accounts." I signed. And here, an initial here, and sign at the bottom. My hand shook. I signed where he pointed, initialed, where he indicated, dated each line with numbers I could barely focus on. "You're doing great, Dad. I've got you. Just a couple more." Roxanne handed him another document without speaking. Their coordination was seamless. I signed a home equity line of credit for $700,000, the full value of the house I had paid off 15 years earlier. I signed a business loan for $340,000 in my name for a company I did not own. I signed a general power of attorney that gave Brent control of every asset in my life. 20 minutes. That was all it took to sign away everything while sitting at my dining room table 3 days after burying the only person who would have stopped me. Grief is a thief of judgment. It clouds the mind like fog over the gulf, makes you trust the wrong hands, sign away your life, because thinking requires energy you do not have, and the pills promise that numbness is better than pain. "All done." Brent gathered the papers. "I'll file these tomorrow. You just rest, okay?" He left. Roxanne followed without speaking a word. I sat at the table until the sun went down. 3 weeks later, I returned from a walk to find the locks changed. Tuesday afternoon, late March. I had started walking daily, trying to clear my head, weaning myself off the pills. The house was 2 miles from Herman Park. I would walk there, sit on a bench, watch people jog past with lives that had not ended. I came home to find my key would not turn. I tried 3 times, thinking maybe I was confused. Then I knocked. Brent opened the door. That is, he said, voice flat now, no warmth. You don't live here anymore. The house is sold. I stared at him. The words made no sense. This was my house. I built it in 1976 with my own hands, framed the walls, poured the foundation, installed every window. What are you talking about? You signed the papers. The house was collateral on the loan. You defaulted. It's been foreclosed and sold. I bought it. You don't live here anymore. Roxanne appeared behind him. She reached into her purse, designer leather new, and pulled out a single $50 bill. She stepped forward and slapped it across my face. The crack echoed across the quiet suburban street. The bill fluttered to the ground. Consider it charity for an old man, she said, voice cold and factual. I stood on the sidewalk of the house I built with my own hands 40 years earlier, every beam measured and cut, every foundation pour, supervised every nail, driven with purpose, and watched my son lock me out of my own life. Through the open door I could see the dining room table. Empty. The furniture was gone. The walls were bare. Brent closed the door. The deadbolt clicked. I bent down and picked up the $50 bill. My hands were steady now. The pills had worn off days ago. My mind was clear enough to understand exactly what had happened, and too clear to protect me from the pain of understanding. I looked up at the house. At the second-story window, the bedroom that had been my granddaughter's, I saw a small shadow. A 9-year-old girl's silhouette against the glass, watching. She stood there for 3 seconds, then retreated into darkness. Vivienne. She had seen everything. The slap. The $50. Her grandfather cast out onto the sidewalk. I stood there until the sun set behind the house I no longer owned. In my pocket, one $50 bill. In my name, $340,000 of debt I never borrowed. On my cheek, the warmth where my daughter-in-law's hand had struck. And in the second-story window, a small shadow retreating into darkness, the only witness who knew the truth and said nothing for 8 years. I walked away from that house with $50 and nowhere to go. 2 months later, someone found me. In the 2 months after my son left me with $50 and a mountain of fraudulent debt, I learned the difference between blood family and real family. May 2016. Small coffee shop on the east side of Houston, scarred wooden tables and burnt coffee. I sat in the corner booth with a newspaper circling job listings. 60 years old with 46 years of experience, but every application asked for an address and references. I had neither. Floyd Lockwood walked in. I had not seen Floyd in 3 years, not since he retired from the business we had built together in the 90s. 64, then gray hair cut short, wearing the same canvas work jacket he had worn on every job site for 30 years. He spotted me and walked to my table without hesitation. Harlan. Floyd. He sat down. Did not ask how I was doing. Did not offer condolences or questions. Just looked at me with the steady gaze of a man who had poured concrete in 100-degree heat and knew words were cheaper than actions. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table. $15,000, he said. Cash. I know you built the I-10 bridge overpass in 2001 when nobody else would take the contract because the ground was too unstable. Pay me back whenever you want. I stared at the envelope. Thick, cream-colored. Inside was more money than I had held in 2 months. I'll pay you back double in 5 years, I said. Floyd smiled. I know. He stood, squeezed my shoulder once and walked out. 90 seconds. 0 questions. 0 pity. Just the tool I needed to rebuild. I opened the envelope. $150 $100 bills, crisp and new. I counted them twice, then put the envelope in my jacket pocket next to the single $50 bill I had carried for 2 months. 2 bills. One from a son who shared my blood and wanted me destroyed. One from a partner who shared my work and wanted me standing. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. My son shared my blood and stole my home. Floyd Lockwood shared my work and saved my life. I knew which bond was stronger. I used that $15,000 to start over. May 2016, registered WH Construction. Anonymous enough to avoid notice. My initials backward. June 2016. First contract. Small foundation job in Pasadena. $8,000. I did the work myself with 2-day laborers. July 2016 through December 2018, methodical growth. Every dollar went 3 directions: 40% to paying the fraudulent debt, 40% to business reinvestment, 20% to survival. I lived cheap, drove a 15-year-old truck, ate the same breakfast every morning, because routine saved energy for work. I paid off $340,000 in 3 years. Every month a cashier's check to the banks. I could have fought it in court, proven forgery. But lawsuits require lawyers and depositions. Brent would have found me. I needed to stay hidden until I was ready to be found. January 2019 through December 2021, the company grew. WH Construction became known for precision work and fair bids. I hired carefully, built slowly, avoided attention. By 2022, the company was worth $85 million. That was when I deliberately changed everything. February 2022. I called the Houston Chronicle and offered an interview. Local success story. They loved it. The article ran with my real name, Harlan Mercer, and a photo of me at the new convention center. Headline: from $50 to $85,000. $1 million engineer builds, empire after personal tragedy. I gave them the narrative they wanted. Widower who lost everything, started over, succeeded through grit. I mentioned the $50 specifically. Did not mention my son or fraud. Just painted myself as the sympathetic underdog. I knew exactly what I was doing. An engineer understands that before you build, you must survey the ground. And sometimes the strongest foundation is 8 years of patient silence, followed by one carefully placed article. Bait. I waited. October 2024, 2.5 years later, Vivian called. Saturday morning, 7:15 a.m. I was already in the office reviewing blueprints. Floyd's name appeared on my phone screen. Harlan thought you should know. Brent Hayes asked about you at 3 different Houston banks last week. He's using a private investigator. I know, I said. Thanks, Floyd. You need anything? Not yet. I'll call when I do. I hung up and opened my laptop. Pulled up the email I had been drafting since Brent's call 8 hours earlier. The recipient, Preston Dalton, corporate attorney. Subject line, Phase 1, begin. I did not type anything new, just stared at the screen reviewing the timeline. February 2022, article published with my real name and the $50 story. October 2024, Vivian's homework assignment. Her Google search, her 47 calls, her trembling voice. 12 hours later, Brent's midnight call. Rehearsed apology. Request for $1.2 million. Every piece moving exactly as designed. The article was not a success story. It was a trap. I had baited the hook with my name and $85 million, then waited to see how long desperation would force my son to bite. 2.5 years. Phase 1 was not beginning now. Phase 1 had been complete the moment Vivian found that article and called me. Every conversation since had been data collection, testing their desperation, measuring their strategy, understanding how they planned to extract money. Now I knew. I clicked send. The subject line stared back from my sent folder, Phase 1 begin. The article had been published 2 years ago. Vivian's random homework assignment. Brent's desperate midnight call. Every piece moving exactly as I had designed it. Phase 1 was not beginning. It was already complete. Now came Phase 2, letting them get close enough to think they could win. Phase 2 meant letting them come to me. I did not have to wait long. The girl who walked into my office lobby at exactly 10 o'clock Saturday morning was nothing like the trembling voice who had called me 3 nights before. Vivian Mercer stood in the doorway, wearing designer jeans and a navy sweater that looked expensive in the way rich people's casual clothes always do, calculated elegance pretending to be effortless. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her posture was straight. Her smile was practiced. She extended her hand the moment she saw me. "Grandpa, it's good to finally meet you in person." Her handshake was firm, not the trembling grip of a nervous teenager, not the hesitant touch of someone meeting a stranger who happened to share her blood. This was a business handshake, confident and measured. I held her hand for 2 seconds longer than necessary, watching her eyes. She maintained perfect eye contact. No wavering, no tears, no vulnerability. On the phone 3 nights ago, her voice had broken on the word, "Grandpa." She had cried. She had been desperate and uncertain and afraid I would hang up. This girl standing in front of me now showed none of that. "Follow me," I said. I led her down the hallway to my office. 3rd floor corner room, windows overlooking the construction yard, where 3 flatbed trucks sat loaded with steel beams for Monday morning's job. I did not offer her coffee, did not ask how she was doing, did not make small talk about the weather or the traffic or how she found the building. I walked to my desk and stood behind it looking at her. "What do you want?" The question came out flat and direct. No warmth, no grandfatherly affection, just the cold query of a man who had learned that people who showed up in his life after 8 years of silence wanted something specific. Vivian did not hesitate, did not pause to gather her thoughts, did not show any surprise at the blunt question. "I want to know my grandfather," she said. Her voice was steady, rehearsed, too smooth. No natural stumble, no teenage awkwardness. Just a perfect answer delivered with perfect timing. I picked up the water pitcher from the side table and poured 2 glasses slowly, deliberately, watching her the entire time. She stood still, hands clasped in front of her, waiting. Her composure never cracked. Most 17-year-olds fidget. They check their phones. They shift their weight from foot to foot. They fill silence with nervous chatter. Vivian did none of those things. "Sit down," I said. Not an invitation, a command. She sat in the chair across from my desk, back straight, hands folded in her lap. I slid one of the water glasses across the desk toward her. She picked it up with steady hands and took a small sip. I sat down in my chair and leaned back, studying her. She met my gaze without flinching. "You called me 3 nights ago crying," I said. "You could barely get the words out. You sounded terrified I would hang up on you." "I was nervous," she said. "You're not nervous now. I've had time to process, time to think about what I wanted to say. A lie is like a foundation crack, invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to an engineer." And this girl's smooth answer had hairline fractures running through every syllable. No one processes grief and abandonment in 3 days. No one goes from sobbing on the phone to corporate handshakes and perfect posture in 72 hours. Not naturally. Not without coaching. "Who told you to come here?" I asked. "No one. I wanted to meet you." "Who told you what to say?" "No one told me anything. I just wanted to—" "Stop." My voice cut through her sentence like a blade. She stopped mid-word, mouth still open. I leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "I'm going to ask you one question. If you lie to me, you can walk out that door, and we will never speak again. If you tell me the truth, we can have a conversation. Understood?" Vivian nodded. For the first time since she walked in, I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross her face. Just a flash gone in half a second, but it was there. Tell me about the day I was evicted. Silence. 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Then Vivian looked directly at me and said, I don't remember that day. Her voice was steady. Her expression was neutral. Her hands did not shake. Perfect delivery, too perfect. You were 9 years old, I said quietly. You don't remember your grandfather being thrown out of his own home. You don't remember the locks being changed. You don't remember anything about that day. No, she said. I was young. I don't remember. How does a 17-year-old girl forget the day her mother slapped her grandfather with a $50 bill and locked him out on the street? She doesn't, unless someone told her to. I had seen the shadow in the second-story window that afternoon 8 years ago. A small silhouette behind the glass watching. 9-year-old Vivian standing there as her mother struck me as her father closed the door, as I stood on the sidewalk holding the single bill that was now my entire net worth. She had watched everything, and now she was sitting in my office telling me she remembered nothing. I set my water glass down on the desk with deliberate care. The sound of glass on wood echoed in the quiet room. You're lying, I said. Vivian's expression did not change. I'm not lying. I just don't remember. Yes, you do. You were standing in the window of your bedroom. Second story, right side of the house. You watched the whole thing. You saw your mother slap me. You saw your father close the door. You saw me standing on the sidewalk. For the first time, something shifted in her eyes. Not guilt, not shame, just calculation. She was deciding whether to maintain the lie or adjust strategy. She chose to maintain it. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. I don't remember. I leaned back in my chair and looked at her for a long moment. She remembered. I knew she remembered. And she knew I knew. But someone had coached her to lie. Someone had told her exactly what to say, how to act, how to present herself. Someone had rehearsed this entire performance with her. The question was not whether she was lying. The question was what else she was hiding. I let Vivian leave without calling her a liar. She walked out of my office with her rehearsed composure intact, and I let her go. Sometimes you learn more from what people hide than what they reveal. Sometimes the hardest truths hide in the places we store our past. Saturday evening, I went to my garage looking for a measuring tape. I had a small repair job at home bathroom cabinet door that had come loose from its hinge. Simple fix. 5-minute job if I could find the right tools. The old toolbox sat on the metal shelf where it had lived for 8 years. Red steel scratched and dented with my initials stamped on the side. It was the only possession I had salvaged from the eviction. Brent had sold everything else, furniture, tools, equipment I had collected over 40 years. But this box had been in my truck that day, and he could not take what he could not find. I opened the top tray. Screwdrivers, wrenches, wire cutters. Beneath that, the main compartment with hammers and levels and measuring tapes. I found what I needed and started to close the lid. Then I saw the corner of yellowed paper wedged in the bottom seam. I pulled it out. An envelope, cream-colored, sealed. My wife's handwriting on the front. Just my name. Harlan. My hands started shaking before I even opened it. The letter inside was dated 3 months before she died. I recognized the stationery, the set I had bought her for Christmas 2 years before that. Blue flowers printed along the edges. Her handwriting was shaky, uncertain. I read it standing in the garage under the fluorescent lights. Harlan, I need to tell you something, but I don't have the heart to say it to your face. Brent came to me last week asking for money. He said his company is in trouble. Real trouble. Not the kind that fixes itself. He's made bad investments, trusted the wrong partners, borrowed from people he shouldn't have. He wanted me to talk to you about taking out a loan on the house. I told him no. I told him we would help him find another way, but not that. He got angry. He said I was choosing you over him. Maybe I am. I don't know what to do. I'm scared of what he might do if he gets desperate enough. I'm writing this because if something happens, I want you to know I saw it coming. I just didn't know how to stop it. I love you. I love him too. That's the problem. I'm sorry. I stood in that garage until 2 in the morning, holding that letter. She had known. 3 months before she died, she had seen exactly what Brent was capable of. And she had carried that weight alone, trying to protect both of us, trying to protect me from the truth, and trying to protect him from the consequences. For the first time in 8 years, I cried. Not because my son had stolen from me, but because my wife had died knowing and she loved him enough to carry that weight alone, rather than force me to choose between them. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my wallet. Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock, Brent and Roxanne walked into my conference room. Brent wore a suit that did not fit right shoulders. Too wide sleeves, too long, the kind of cheap suit bought to project success when you have none. He carried a thick folder stuffed with papers. He walked with false confidence, chest out, chin up, performing the role of successful businessman. Roxanne walked beside him in an expensive dress and heels that I knew they could not afford. She surveyed my conference room, plain walls, rough wooden table, no pretense of luxury, with visible contempt. I sat at the head of the table and said nothing. Brent tossed the folder onto the table between us. Dad, I need to be straight with you. The company is facing a temporary liquidity crisis. We need $1.2 million to restructure. He opened the folder and started pulling out documents. Spreadsheets. Financial projections. Graphs showing revenue trends. It's just a market downturn, he continued. Every developer in Houston is experiencing this right now. The residential market has contracted 18% in the last quarter. We just need capital to bridge the gap until things stabilize. He spoke for 12 minutes, used words like liquidity and restructuring and market correction, pointed to numbers on charts, explained his business model, his client base, his projected recovery timeline. I did not take notes, did not ask questions, just sat there watching him perform the script someone, probably Roxanne, had written for him. Roxanne sat beside him, hands folded on the table, expression neutral. She let Brent do all the talking. Smart strategy. Make the son deliver the pitch. Make it about family. Make the father feel obligated. Brent finished his presentation. He leaned back in his chair, breathing hard from the effort of his performance, and waited for my response. I leaned forward. Who's investigating your company, Waning? The question landed like a hammer on glass. Brent blinked. What nobody's investigating. This is just a restructuring. Who's investigating your company? I repeated. Roxanne's face changed. Just for a second. A flicker of something, surprise maybe, or recognition crossed her features before she locked them down again. But I saw it. The first crack in her composure since she walked through my door. She stared at me, silent, calculating. Preston Dalton had sent me the preliminary report 3 days ago. Texas State Securities Board investigating fraud allegations related to Brent's real estate development company. Federal wire fraud inquiry running parallel. Client complaints about non-delivered properties. Forged inspection certificates. Diverted funds. This meeting was not a negotiation. It was a test. I wanted to see how they would react when they realized I already knew. Roxanne operated like a chess player 3 moves ahead, calculating probabilities. Brent operated like a drowning man grasping desperate reactive. And I operated like an engineer watching the structure crack under pressure. There's no investigation, Brent said, voice rising. I don't know where you heard that, but it's not true. I looked at Roxanne. She was still staring at me. Not at the walls or the furniture or the folder of useless projections on the table. At me. There was no shame in her eyes, no embarrassment at being caught in a lie, only calculation. She was recalculating who I was. The naive father she had slapped with a $50 bill 8 years ago no longer existed in front of her. Roxanne recovered before Brent could fumble another excuse. "Major Harlan," she said, and her voice shifted. Not defensive, not angry, sweet, calculated. The voice of someone who had just finished recalibrating her strategy and decided on a new approach. Brent closed his mouth and looked at his wife. Roxanne leaned forward, hands folded on the table, eyes locked on mine. I think we started this conversation on the wrong foot. Let me be direct. While the loan is the priority, we also need to discuss your estate planning. Brent is your only child, your only heir. You've built an incredible company here, and we need to make sure there's a clear succession plan. She paused, let the words settle, then delivered the real demand. We need a formal will, drafted now, before anything else happens. There it was, the true objective. Not the loan, not the bailout, the inheritance. The same play they had run 8 years ago when my wife died. Put documents in front of a vulnerable man and get signatures while he is too compromised to understand what he is signing. Brent nodded along. Dad, it just makes sense. You're 68. You need to have this stuff in place. Roxanne continued, voice smooth as oil. You disappeared for 8 years, Harlan. I understand you had your reasons. I'm not here to judge that. But you owe this family, you owe your son some security. Some assurance that all this won't just vanish again. She blamed me for disappearing. The woman who locked me out of my own home, slapped me with a $50 bill, told me to figure it out, now claimed I abandoned them. Gaslighting at its purest form. Rewrite history until the victim becomes the villain and the villain becomes the victim. I sat there and let her finish. We're not asking for anything unreasonable, she said. Just clarity, just documentation, just the normal things a father does for his son. Brent looked at me with something that might have been hope or might have been greed. Hard to tell the difference when both emotions want the same outcome. I waited 5 full seconds. Let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Watched them shift in their seats. Watched Roxanne maintain her composure while Brent started to sweat. Then I spoke. Fine, I will make a will. I will invite you both to the official announcement. Roxanne smiled, small, controlled. The smile of someone who thinks she just won. When? Brent asked. November 15th. November 15th, Roxanne repeated. That works. We'll be there. Brent nodded eagerly. Thank you, Dad. This means... You can leave now, I said. They stood, gathered their useless folder of financial projections. Roxanne extended her hand. I did not take it. She withdrew it without comment, smile still fixed in place. They walked out of my conference room, believing they had manipulated me, believing their performance had worked, believing November 15th would be the day they secured their inheritance. I sat at the table and watched the door close behind them. The trap was set. 2 hours later, I sat in Preston Dalton's downtown law office. Preston was 45, sharp-eyed, with the kind of precise demeanor that came from 20 years practicing corporate law. He sat behind his mahogany desk with a thick file folder in front of him, my chief legal counsel, who had spent 3 months quietly gathering evidence while Brent thought he was safe. Your son's real estate firm is under investigation by the Texas State Securities Board, Preston said without preamble. He opened the folder. $2.3 million embezzled from 47 small retail investors over the past 4 years. Promised residential developments that were never built. Forged inspection certificates. Diverted construction funds to personal accounts. He slid a document across the desk. I recognized names on the investor list. Retirees, teachers, people who had saved their whole lives and trusted the wrong man. The federal government is running a parallel wire fraud investigation. Every email Brent sent, every phone call he made to solicit these investments, that's wire fraud. Federal jurisdiction. How long before they arrest him? I asked. Well, if you don't interfere, 60 to 90 days. The state investigation is almost complete. Federal moves slower, but they're building an airtight case. Preston laid out the legal architecture like a blueprint. State securities fraud carries a 5-year statute of limitations, but federal wire fraud using email or phone to execute the crime resets the clock to 0. Brent had used both. Every investor pitch email, every confirmation call, every wire transfer instruction, all documented, all prosecutable. What happens if they're convicted? I asked. State level 3 to 5 years. Federal wire fraud 10 to 20. Run consecutively, not concurrently. He's looking at real time. I sat back in the leather chair and thought about my wife's letter. About how she had known Brent was in trouble and died trying to protect him anyway. About how that protection had enabled him to steal from 47 people who trusted him. What about Roxanne? I asked. Harder to prove direct involvement, but we have evidence she signed incorporation documents for the shell companies. Conspiracy to commit fraud? 5 to 10 years? Preston closed the folder and looked at me. The natural timeline puts arrests in mid-December, maybe early January. But you want me to coordinate something specific. That's why you called this meeting. Do not interfere, I said. Let the investigations proceed naturally, but I want them arrested after November 15th. Right at the announcement. Preston looked at me carefully. You mean let them arrest Brent before the 15th? Wouldn't that... No, I said. I want them arrested after the 15th. Right at the announcement. Preston understood immediately. His expression did not change, but I saw the recognition in his eyes. The fall would be steeper from the top. Let them think they won. Let them stand in front of 200 shareholders and board members expecting to inherit $85 million. Let them smile and shake hands and feel the weight of victory. Then let the federal agents walk through the door. I've already been in contact with the state and federal prosecution teams, Preston said quietly. I've made them aware of your timeline. The decision is theirs, but a high-profile fraud arrest at a corporate announcement. They'll want the press coverage. I expect they'll move accordingly. Good, I said. I stood. Preston stood with me. The arrest team will be positioned outside the east entrance, Preston said. Agent Morrison from the federal field office. He's handled elder fraud cases before. He knows how to move quietly until the moment is right. November 15th, he said. November 15th. I confirmed. I left Preston's office with a clear timeline. November 15th. Everything before that was preparation. Everything after would be consequences. I did not expect Vivian to break first. Tuesday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. I was parked in my truck at a construction site reviewing foundation specs when my phone rang. Vivian's number. I almost did not answer. Then I remembered that sometimes the most important data comes from unexpected sources. Grandpa, she said. Her voice was different. No polish, no rehearsal. Raw. I'm listening, I said. I want to tell you the truth. I turned off the truck engine, rolled up the windows, gave her my full attention. Last night, my best friend dragged me to the park, Vivian said. Serena Callahan. We've been friends since elementary school. She doesn't let me get away with anything. She paused. I heard her breathing, trying to find the words. She grabbed my arm after school and pulled me to this bench under the streetlights. Told me she knew I was lying about not remembering the eviction. She said she saw me at the window that day, watching. Serena Callahan, 17 years old. Vivian's best friend since elementary school, and apparently the only person who refused to let her hide from what she had witnessed 8 years ago. What did you tell her? I asked. Ma, I tried to deflect. Said you were rich, so why not approach you? She just looked at me for like 10 seconds and then said, Vivian's voice cracked. She said, because he's your grandfather. And you are not Roxanne. I sat in the truck cab, listening to my granddaughter cry for the first time since I had known her. Not the manufactured tears of Friday night's phone call. Real crying. The kind that comes when someone holds up a mirror and you do not like what you see. I went home, she continued after a moment. Walked past the living room. Mom was on the phone with someone whispering. She didn't hear me come in. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds, then went straight to my room. Did she see you listening? No. I went to my room. This morning at breakfast, she made me porridge and told me I did a great job. That you already liked me. She was so pleased with herself. Vivian stopped. I could hear her gathering courage for the next part. I asked her directly if she orchestrated the homework assignment from the start. About finding you. She didn't even try to deny it. Just said, families need each other. That's not wrong. I thought about Roxanne standing silent behind Brent 8 years ago while he carried the forged documents into my dining room. Thought about her preparing every fraudulent signature line, every fake loan, every calculated theft. She had engineered my destruction the same way she was now engineering my reconnection with Vivian as a tool, a means to an end. I looked at my mother this morning, Vivian said quietly, and I didn't recognize her. Or maybe I recognized her for the first time. I don't know which is worse. What makes someone family blood or choice? Vivian's mother gave her blood and taught her to lie. Serena gave her truth and demanded she face it. I was giving her a chance to choose which kind of person she wanted to be. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Serena was right. I'm not Roxanne. I don't want to be Roxanne. And I can't keep lying to you. You lied to me Saturday morning. You said you didn't remember the eviction. I know. You watched your mother slap me with $50 and lock me out of my own home. I know. You were 9 years old and you saw everything, and you stayed silent for 8 years. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper now. I'm sorry. I sat in the truck, watching 2 construction workers carry steel beams across the site. They worked in tandem, synchronized, each trusting the other to hold their end of the weight. That was what partnership looked like, what family should look like. I don't know what I want anymore, Vivian said. I thought I did. I thought I was helping my family. But now I don't know if helping them is the right thing or if I'm just becoming her. Chick, you've been honest, I said. That's the first step. But honesty isn't enough. You need to prove it. How? I'll let you know. I was about to hang up when something occurred to me. A final test. One more piece of data to confirm what I already suspected. Vivian, before you go, one question. Okay. Chatia, do you know that Roxanne is contacting a private lawyer regarding a will contest? Silence. I counted the seconds the way I had counted them during our first phone call. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 seconds. Long enough to decide whether to lie. Long enough to weigh protection of her mother against the honesty she had just claimed to value. Long enough for me to hear everything she was not saying. I know, she said finally. Those 2 words carried more weight than any explanation could. She knew about the lawyer. She knew her mother was already planning to contest whatever will I made, already calculating how to extract maximum value even if I tried to cut them out. She knew the depths of Roxanne's manipulation, and she was telling me anyway. "Thank you for being honest," I said. "What happens now? Now you prove you mean it." I hung up and sat in the truck for 10 minutes thinking. Vivian had just handed me intelligence about Roxanne's will contest strategy. Whether she realized it or not, she had chosen a side. She had given me information that could protect me and damage her mother. The question was whether this was genuine moral awakening or another layer of manipulation. Whether Vivian was truly trying to break free from Roxanne's influence, or whether this confession was itself part of a more sophisticated plan, I would know soon enough. November 15th was 3 weeks away. That gave me time to design one final test, one that would prove definitively whether Vivian was worth saving or whether she was already too much like her mother to change. I started the truck and drove back to the office. Phase 3 was beginning. Vivian's confession about the will contest lawyer told me she was trying to choose honesty. Whether she could sustain that choice under pressure was another question entirely. I chose the same coffee shop where Floyd Lockwood had saved my life 8 years ago, the corner table, 2 black coffees, and a test that would determine if Vivian was worth saving. Sunday morning, November 8th. 1 week until November 15th. The coffee shop looked exactly the same: scarred wooden tables, burnt coffee, the smell of old grease from the kitchen. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the same corner booth where Floyd had slid me $15,000 in a cream envelope. Vivian walked in at exactly 10 o'clock. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. No designer clothes this time. No calculated elegance. She looked younger without the polish, closer to 17 than the sophisticated performance she had delivered in my office. She sat down across from me without speaking. I slid a black coffee toward her. She wrapped her hands around it, but did not drink. "Thank you for meeting me," I said. "You said you had a test." "I do." I pulled a folded document from my jacket and placed it on the table between us. Plain white paper, 3 pages, legal text. I unfolded it so she could read the first paragraph. Last will and testament of Harlan Mercer. I hereby declare that all assets, properties, and holdings valued at approximately $85 million shall be transferred upon my death to the $50 Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to supporting victims of elder financial abuse. I leave 0 assets to any family members. Vivian stared at the paper. I watched her face, watched the calculation happen in real time, watched her read the words twice, then a third time, as if hoping they would change. "This is what I'm announcing on November 15th, I said. "I want you to know this beforehand, so you can choose whether or not to attend." Silence. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 seconds of visible internal war. I could see it in her eyes, the pull of money against the pull of integrity. The voice of her mother whispering that family deserved inheritance against whatever voice was telling her that some things mattered more than wealth. "I still want to come," she said finally. Her voice was quiet, uncertain, but she said it. "Why?" I asked. "Because you're my grandfather, and I want to know you, even if that means getting nothing." The hesitation told me she was not fully there yet, not fully free from the calculation. But she was trying. Trust is earned through actions, not words. Vivian said she would still come, knowing there was no money. But she had hesitated 8 seconds first. That hesitation told me everything she wanted to be better than her parents, but the calculation was still there, whispering in the back of her mind. "Okay," I said. "November 15th, 10 a.m. WH Construction Headquarters. I'll be there." She left the document on the table and walked out. I sat there for another 10 minutes, drinking bad coffee and thinking about the difference between wanting to change and actually changing. Vivienne was somewhere in between. The question was which direction she would move when the pressure increased. Wednesday afternoon, November 11th, Floyd called me from his car. "You were right," he said. "Brent just showed up at my office parking lot. And I had the recording device in my jacket like you told me. Got everything." I had given Floyd a small audio recorder 3 days earlier. Told him to keep it on him whenever he was in public. Brent was desperate enough to make mistakes, and desperate men talk too much. "What did he say?" Asked how much your company is really worth. Wanted to know if 85 million was the real number, or if you were hiding more. I played dumb. Told him I didn't know much about your finances these days. How did he respond? She got more desperate. Said he needed to know before December 1st. That the Texas State Securities Board is freezing his accounts. He's counting on your announcement to save him. December 1st. 19 days after my trap would spring. An engineer understands that pressure reveals structural weakness. Brent's December 1st deadline was the pressure. My November 15th trap was positioned exactly where the structure would crack widest. He said something else. Floyd continued. Something about Vivian. Said she's been working on you. That Roxanne coached her on what to say, how to act. He called her their ace in the hole. Did he say anything specific about what Vivian's supposed to do? Just that she needs to keep you believing she's genuine. Keep you sympathetic to family. Make sure you don't cut them out completely before the 15th. I thought about Vivian's 8-second hesitation. About her visible calculation when she saw the zero inheritance document. About whether her confession to me was genuine transformation or just another layer of manipulation. "Send me the recording," I said. "Already done. Check your email." I hung up and opened my laptop. The audio file was there. I listened to it twice. Brent's voice was desperate, cracking at the edges. He needed money before December 1st, or the investigation would freeze everything and he would have nothing. My trap would spring on November 15th. Federal agents would arrest him shortly after, probably within days. The Texas State Securities Board freeze on December 1st would be irrelevant because he would already be in custody. Perfect timing, maximum desperation, complete humiliation. I looked at my calendar. 19 days until November 15th. Floyd called me back at 6 p.m. "Harlan, he needs money before December 1st, and he's using Vivian as a pawn." "I know," I said. "What are you going to do?" "Give Vivian a choice, a real one. Let her prove whether Tuesday's confession was real or performance. And if it was performance, then she'll learn the same lesson her father is about to learn. Actions have consequences." I hung up and looked at my watch. 19 days. The evidence was solid. Preston had coordinated with federal prosecutors. The timeline was exact. The only variable I could not engineer was a 17-year-old girl's conscience. That was the one thing I had never been able to calculate. I gave Vivian a choice. Now I needed to prepare for either outcome. Preston Dalton placed the USB drive on his desk. Thursday afternoon, smaller than my thumb, weighing less than an ounce, containing enough evidence to destroy my son's life. "This is the neighbor's security camera footage from March 2016, Preston said. "Legally obtained, legally stored for 8 years. I picked up the drive. Black plastic. Cold. Unremarkable. "When did you get this?" I asked. "Month 1. Right after the eviction. You hired a private investigator to document everything. He recovered footage from the neighbor's camera across the street, the Hendersons. They had a security system pointed at the sidewalk. It captured everything." Preston opened his laptop and plugged in the drive. The video loaded. Black and white. March 2016. Timestamp in the corner. I watched myself stand on the sidewalk while Roxanne pulled the $50 bill from her purse. Watched her step forward. Watched her hand swing across my face with enough force that my head turned. The crack of the slap was audible even through the security camera microphone. Brent stood behind her, arms crossed, watching. Not stopping her, not intervening, just watching his wife assault his father and doing nothing. The video showed me picking up the $50 bill from the sidewalk, showed the door closing, showed me standing there alone until the timestamp hit 6:18 p.m. and I finally walked away. 15 seconds of footage, Preston said. Combined with the forged power of attorney documents, the fraudulent loans, and the wire fraud charges, this constitutes federal elder financial abuse. The prosecution loves cases with video evidence. This video will finish them, I said. Preston nodded. The jury will see it. The press will see it. Everyone will see exactly who they are. I held the USB drive between my fingers. Smaller than a finger. Heavier than 8 years. Evidence is not just facts and timestamps. It is weight. The USB drive weighed less than an ounce. The video inside weighed 8 years of patient silence, calculated waiting, and the precise moment when patience transforms into power. Keep it safe, I said. November 15th. I want this shown at the announcement. Understood. I left Preston's office with the knowledge that everything was in place. The evidence, the timeline, the federal coordination. The only variable left was Vivian. Friday night, Vivian sat in her bedroom staring at her phone. I know this because she told me about it later. Told me how she could not sleep. How she called Serena on video chat at 11 p.m. desperate for someone to help her make sense of the choice in front of her. Serena answered on the third ring. I don't know what to do, Vivian said. Her voice was breaking. He's giving everything away. All of it. To charity. Mom is using me. Dad needs money before December 1st or he loses everything. And I don't know who I am anymore. Serena looked at her through the screen. Best friends since elementary school. The only person who had seen Vivian at the window 8 years ago and refused to let her forget it. You know the answer, Serena said quietly. You're just scared. Of what? So of becoming who you need to be instead of who they want you to be. Vivian started crying. Not the manufactured tears from the first phone call. Real crying. The kind that comes when you are standing at a crossroads and both paths lead away from everything you have known. If you stay silent this time, Serena said, voice gentle but firm, you become Roxanne. Those were Serena's exact words, as Vivian repeated them to me weeks later. She said they landed like a hammer. Vivian stayed awake all night, stared at the ceiling, thought about the 9-year-old girl who had watched from the window and said nothing. Thought about the 17-year-old girl who had lied to her grandfather's face about not remembering. Thought about who she would be at 18, at 25, at 40, if she stayed silent one more time. Before I tell you what Vivian decided, are you still with me? Comment A. If you think she chose silence to protect her family, or B, if you think she finally spoke, and add one short reason why. A quick note, the next part includes some fictionalized details to deepen the emotional impact. The lesson behind the choice is what matters most. The next morning, Saturday, November 14th, one day before the announcement, my phone rang at 8 a.m. Vivienne, I answered. Grandpa, I need to tell you what Mom is planning. Her voice was different. Completely different. Not the trembling call from 3 weeks ago when she had found the Forbes article. Not the rehearsed performance from the office visit. Not even the raw confession from Tuesday afternoon. This was the voice of someone who had made a choice and would not be moved from it. I'm listening, I said. We don't become our parents by accident. We become them by choice. One silence at a time. Vivian had stayed silent at 9 years old, watching from the window. At 17, she was choosing to speak. She's been preparing files, Vivian said. Documents claiming you abandoned the family. Statements from people who say you were mentally unstable after Grandma died. The plan is to file everything the moment you finish speaking, before you can transfer a single asset. I know, I said. You know, I've been watching your mother for 8 years. She's predictable. Silence on the other end. Then Vivian spoke again, voice quieter now. There's more. She's planning to file the contest immediately after the announcement. Before you can transfer any assets, she wants to freeze everything legally so you can't give it away. She's counting on the optics grandfather cuts out, grieving son, family forced to fight in court, media makes you look like the villain. Only smart strategy, Kyle, I said. Are you going to stop it? No. I'm going to let her try. And then I'm going to show 200 people exactly who she is. Vivienne was quiet for a long moment. I want to help, she said finally. I don't know how, but I want to help. You already are, I said. You chose to call me. You chose honesty. That's the hardest part. What happens now? Now you prove you mean it. I hung up and sat at my desk, thinking about transformation, about the difference between wanting to change and actually changing, about the moment when words become actions. Vivian had crossed a threshold overnight. Whether she could sustain that choice under pressure from Roxanne and Brent was another question. But she had made the call. She had spoken instead of staying silent. That was something. 24 hours until November 15th. Words were easy. Actions would prove whether Vivian's transformation was real. Vivian climbed into my truck at the construction site Saturday afternoon, and for the first time in 3 weeks, I saw no calculation in her eyes, only resolve. I had parked at the back of the lot away from the workers. Vivian closed the door and sat with her hands folded. Mom hired a private lawyer, she said. Someone who specializes in will contests. The plan is to file immediately after your announcement, before you can transfer assets. She has documents claiming you abandoned us. Witness statements saying you were unstable after Grandma died. I nodded, showed no surprise. Preston had told me everything 2 days ago. This meeting was not about intelligence. It was about testing whether Vivian would deliver what I was about to give her. I know, I said. You know, I've been watching your mother for 8 years. She telegraphs her strategy. I reached across and opened the glove compartment, pulled out a small USB drive. Before I take the podium on the 15th, give this to the man near the east entrance. Dark blue suit. His name is Floyd. Vivian took the drive. Her hand trembled slightly. What's on it? She asked. The truth. She closed her fingers around it. What if Mom sees me? Then you'll decide in that moment whether you choose integrity or family loyalty. Vivian put it in her jacket pocket and nodded. I'll do it. She climbed out without another word. I watched her drive away. The test was delivered. Whether she would pass remained to be seen. Sunday afternoon, I called Brent. He answered on the second ring. Dad, I've rethought it, I said, voice deliberately tired. I want the family present on the 15th. I'll do what you want. Silence. Then you will. Yes. The will, the loan. We'll discuss it at the announcement. 10 a.m. Be there. I hung up before he could ask more. I told Brent I would do what he wanted. And I would just not the way he imagined. Sometimes the truest lies are spoken in complete honesty. At Brent's house, he set the phone down and turned to Roxanne. He caved, Brent said. I know this because Vivian told me later. Roxanne smiled, looked at Vivian across the dinner table that night and said, Good job, Vivian. Vivian lowered her head and stayed silent. Let them think she had helped. Let them believe their manipulation worked. Let them count money that would never arrive. Sunday night, 11 p.m. I sat in my office reviewing files. Every document, every piece of evidence, every coordinate of the trap I had spent 8 years building. My phone rang. Floyd. Are you sure about this, Harlan? No, I said honestly. But uncertainty isn't a reason not to do it. Fair enough, Floyd paused. I need to tell you something. Vivian met me this afternoon. Voluntarily. I didn't ask her to. She just showed up at my office. I sat forward. And she handed me an envelope. Handwritten notes. Every conversation she overheard between Roxanne and the will contest lawyer. Dates, times, specific strategies. She documented everything on her own. Nobody told her to. I closed my eyes. Vivian had not just passed the test, she had exceeded it. Taking the USB drive was following orders. But documenting Roxanne's conversations, voluntarily creating evidence without being asked, actively building the case against her own mother, that was transformation. Keep it safe, I said. Already locked in my safe. Harlan, she's really doing this. She's really choosing your side. I know. A bridge doesn't fail when weight is applied. It fails when weight exceeds design capacity. For 40 years, I had built structures to hold weight. Now I had built one designed to collapse it. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I would apply the pressure. And the structure they had built on lies would fail exactly as designed. Get some sleep, Floyd said. Big day tomorrow. You too. I hung up and looked at the bridge blueprint on the wall, the same unfinished overpass I had been reviewing the night Vivian first called 3 weeks ago. A good bridge is not one that never shakes. It is one that shakes at the right moment and stands firm after. Tomorrow I would know if this structure stands. I thought about Vivian walking into that conference hall in 12 hours, standing next to Roxanne and Brent, pretending to be their ally while carrying the USB drive in her pocket. The moment when she would hand it to Floyd. Whether her resolve would hold when her mother stood 3 feet away. Then I thought about my wife's letter. How she had known Brent was in trouble and died trying to protect him. How that protection had enabled him to destroy me and 47 others. Some structures need to fall so better ones can be built. I turned off the lights and drove home. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., 200 people would watch me take the podium. Brent and Roxanne would sit in the front row, expecting inheritance. Vivian would carry evidence in her pocket. Floyd would stand near the east door in a dark blue suit. Preston would coordinate with federal prosecutors. And I would stand at the podium, ready to show them exactly what I had built from nothing. Tomorrow came. I watched through the prep room monitor as 200 faces filled the conference hall. And in the front row, my son adjusted his tie like a king about to claim his throne. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened that morning, November 15th, before I walked to that podium. Vivian told me later about the breakfast. 7:42 a.m. at Brent's house. She sat at the kitchen table watching her parents celebrate a victory they had not yet won. Roxanne wore the expensive dress she had bought on a maxed credit card. Brent had opened a bottle of champagne. They toasted across the table, utterly confident I would surrender control at the meeting. I'll be gracious, Roxanne said, practicing her speech. We'll thank him publicly for finally doing the right thing. Make it look like reconciliation, not takeover. Brent nodded. Already planning which executives to fire first, which assets to liquidate, how quickly they could extract cash before anyone realized the company was being stripped. Vivian sat silent, eating toast, the USB drive already in her jacket pocket. She told me she almost said something, almost warned them. Then she remembered Serena's words. If you stay silent this time, you become Roxanne. So she stayed silent for a different reason. Let them celebrate. Let them drink champagne at 7 in the morning. Let them count money that would never arrive. That was the last thing she told me about that morning before the meeting began. By 9:15, the WH Construction Headquarters conference hall was full. 200 people. Shareholders, board members, financial press with cameras set up in the back rows. The air hummed with speculation. Why had I called this emergency meeting? What announcement could be so urgent it required assembling everyone on a Tuesday morning? Floyd Lockwood stood near the east entrance in a dark blue suit, exactly as I had instructed. He scanned the crowd, looking for Vivian. His expression was calm, but I knew him well enough to see the tension in his shoulders. Brent and Roxanne arrived at 9:28. They walked in like royalty, shaking hands, accepting congratulations from people who assumed they knew what was coming. Roxanne's smile was perfect. Brent's confidence was absolute. They took their seats in the front row. Center position. Best view of the podium. At 9:34 a.m., Vivian entered through the east door. I watched on the monitor from the prep room. She wore a dark blue suit that matched Floyd's. Intentional coordination, or coincidence, I was not sure. She navigated through the crowd, weaving between conversations, moving deliberately but not urgently. She reached Floyd. Their hands met for what could have been a handshake, or could have been a brief touch. The USB drive transferred from her palm to his in less than 2 seconds. Floyd pocketed it without looking down. Vivian stepped away. 11 seconds. That was all it took. No one noticed. Brent was talking to a board member. Roxanne was checking her phone. The press was adjusting camera angles. 200 people in that room, and not one of them saw the most important transaction of the morning. Vivian walked 3 rows back and sat down beside Serena Callahan. Serena squeezed her hand once. Vivian stared straight ahead. I sat in the prep room, watching all of this unfold on the monitor. 9:48 a.m. 12 minutes until I would take that podium. I saw Brent lean over and whisper something to Roxanne. Saw her nod and smile. Saw them both settle back in their chairs, with the relaxed posture of people who thought they had already won. I saw Vivian sitting 3 rows back, hands folded in her lap, face carefully blank. I saw Floyd standing near the door, one hand in his pocket where the USB drive now rested. I saw morning light streaming through the east windows. The same light that had been there in 1978, when I broke ground on this building. 46 years of sunrise and steel. 46 years of building structures that would last. This building had survived hurricanes, economic downturns, changes in ownership and management. It would survive this too. I felt no anger, no rage, no desire for revenge, just calm finality. Like standing on a bridge I had designed and built myself, knowing every calculation was correct. Every bolt was torqued to specification. Every beam could hold the weight it was designed to bear. The structure would hold, or it would not. But either way, I had built it right. The transfer had been finalized at 6 a.m., signed, sealed, irrevocable, before a single guest arrived. What Brent and Roxanne were about to hear was not a decision. It was a verdict that had already been executed. They just did not know it yet. At 10 o'clock exactly, I stood up. I left the prep room and walked across the backstage area, pushed open the door and stepped into the conference hall. 200 conversations died mid-sentence. Every eye turned toward me. Every head tracked my movement across the room. The only sound was my footsteps on the hardwood floor and the quiet hum of the cameras rolling. I walked slowly, not rushing, not hesitating. Just walking with the steady pace of a man who had walked this path in his mind 1,000 times and knew exactly where each step would land. Brent smirked. I saw it clearly from 15 feet away. The smile of someone who thought he was about to inherit $85 million. Roxanne's expression was pure triumph. She had won. She had manipulated the old man. She had secured her family's future. I reached the podium and gripped its edges. Justice is not what you feel. It is what you build, one choice, one document, one conversation at a time, until the foundation cannot be shaken. I had spent 8 years building this moment. 8 years of patience. 8 years of waiting for exactly the right pressure point to apply exactly the right force. My hands steadied on the podium. Brent's smirk widened. He thought this was my white flag. Roxanne leaned forward slightly, ready to hear me announce the will that would make them rich. I adjusted the microphone. Let 3 seconds of silence stretch across 200 held breaths, and opened my mouth. The first words out of my mouth were not anger. They were a number. 50. I let the word hang in the air for 3 seconds. Watched confusion ripple across 200 faces. 8 years ago, I walked out of the house I built with $50 in my pocket. Pause. Let it land. Watch Brent's expression shift from smug confidence to the first flicker of uncertainty. $50. That was my severance after 46 years of building this company. After 46 years of concrete and steel. After raising a family and a home I constructed with my own hands. $50. Brent shifted in his seat. Roxanne's practiced smile faltered at the edges. I'd like to tell you what I did with that $50. Another pause. The room was absolutely silent. Even the cameras stopped their quiet whirring. I kept it. For 8 years. As a reminder. And today I'm going to tell you what it reminded me of and what I built from it. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the original bill. Held it up so the cameras could see. $50 worn and creased from 8 years in my wallet. This bill represents something important. It represents what happens when family fails, when blood betrays, when the people who should protect you decide to destroy you instead. Brent went very still. Today I announce that all $85 million of WH construction has been transferred to the $50 foundation. The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, cameras flashing. Behind me, the screen lit up with the foundation logo. A $50 bill with a crack running through its center. Its mission: legal protection for elderly Americans facing financial abuse by their own children. Every asset, every account, every dollar I built over 46 years. Irrevocable as of this morning at 6 a.m. Brent half stood, sat back down. His face drained of color like water running from a broken pipe. Roxanne's knuckles went white, gripping the armrest. I watched Brent's face as the number registered. 85 million. Gone. This was the moment I had built 8 years for. The moment when he realized that every calculation, every manipulation, every lie had been built on a foundation that no longer existed. There was nothing left to inherit. Nothing left to steal. Nothing left to fight over. Just a foundation dedicated to helping people like me who had been destroyed by people like them. The hall erupted in chaos. Shareholders talking over each other. Board members leaning forward. Press cameras clicking frantically. Floyd Lockwood stood near the east door, expression neutral, but his eyes found mine for half a second. A brief nod. The USB drive had done its job. I see some of you are confused, I said. My voice cut through the noise. The room quieted. Let me provide context. I pulled the remote from my pocket and pressed a button. The screen behind me went black. Then security camera footage appeared. Black and white. Timestamp in the corner. March 19th, 2016, 3:47 p.m. My old house, the front door. Me standing on the sidewalk. Roxanne stepping out, reaching into her purse, pulling out a $50 bill. The video played in absolute silence. You could see her arm swing. See her hand connect with my face. See my head turn from the impact. See the bill flutter to the ground. See Brent standing behind her in the doorway. Arms crossed. Watching, not intervening, not stopping her. Just watching his wife assault his father. See me bend down and pick up the $50. See the door close. See me stand there alone on the sidewalk for 15 seconds before walking away. The video froze on the moment of impact. Roxanne's hand mid-strike. My face turning. The $50 bill visible in her fingers. This is where the $50 came from, I said. March 19th, 2016. My kitchen, my son, and his wife. The room was so quiet, I could hear the air conditioning running. The woman in that video is sitting in the front row. 200 heads turned in unison. Every eye in the room locked onto Roxanne. She stood halfway up, mouth open. No sound came out. The sound of 200 people inhaling at once, sharp, collective like air being sucked from the room before thunder. Her name is Roxanne Mercer, my daughter-in-law. Cameras swiveled. 40 lenses focused on Roxanne's face. She was frozen, caught between sitting and standing, suspended in the moment, when she realized that everything had just collapsed. The murmur started low. Shock, disgust, recognition. Then it built, grew louder, swelled like a wave gathering force. Brent stared at the floor. His hands were shaking. Vivian sat 3 rows back beside Serena. Her face was carefully blank, but I saw her hands gripping the armrests. She had known this was coming. She had helped make it happen. Now she was watching her mother be destroyed in front of 200 witnesses. Roxanne tried to speak. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. She looked around the room at the cameras, at the shareholders, at the press, at the board members, all staring at her with expressions ranging from horror to fascination. She had walked into this room an hour ago like royalty. Now she stood exposed. The video played on a loop behind me on the screen. Slap, rewind, slap, rewind. Over and over. I kept that $50 for 8 years, I said quietly. And I used it to build something that would make sure no one else's family could do to them what mine did to me. Roxanne stood frozen between sitting and standing, caught in the glare of 40 cameras and 400 eyes. The murmur built to a roar, disgust, shock, recognition, spreading through the room like fire. She opened her mouth, but no defense came out. Before Roxanne could form a defense, Floyd Lockwood rose from his seat near the back. He walked to the podium and stood beside me. His presence was solid, calm, deliberate. Then Preston Dalton stood from row 5, my corporate attorney, the man who had spent 3 months quietly assembling the legal case, while Brent and Roxanne counted money they would never see. Preston's voice cut through the chaos. All documentation has been filed with the Department of Justice as of November 13th. He said, wire fraud, elder financial abuse, conspiracy to defraud, federal charges carrying 15 to 20 years. Brent's face drained white. All color left. He looked like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was not solid. Roxanne spun toward him, fury replacing shock. You told me there was no proof. Brent's voice rose, cracking at the edges. He stood pointing at Roxanne. You said we covered everything. You said he was too old to fight back. Roxanne's eyes went cold. You signed every document. Your name is on the contracts, not mine. You prepared them. You executed them. Every forged signature. Every fraudulent loan. Your handwriting. Your accounts. They turned on each other in front of 200 witnesses and 40 cameras. 8 years of alliance shattering in real time. Brent called her reckless. Roxanne called him stupid. The careful coordination that had destroyed me was eating itself. I stood at the podium watching, said nothing. Let them expose themselves more thoroughly than any prosecutor ever could. Then the east door opened. 2 federal agents walked in carrying arrest warrants. The lead agent was in his mid-40s with gray temples and efficient movements, the kind of man who had executed hundreds of arrests and approached each one with the same professional calm. His partner was younger, carrying handcuffs. Brent Mercer, Roxanne Mercer, you're under arrest for federal wire fraud and conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse. The lead agent, his badge said Agent Morrison, read the charges in a voice that carried across the silent room. Roxanne tried to speak. Agent Morrison raised one hand. "No, you have the right to remain silent." The younger agent, Agent Hayes, moved behind Brent. Handcuffs clicked. Metal on wrist. The sound was sharp and final. Brent didn't resist. He just stood there, hands behind his back, staring at nothing. Roxanne opened her mouth. Agent Morrison shook his head and continued reading Miranda rights. Cameras flashed. The press recorded everything. 200 people watched in absolute silence as my son and his wife were led toward the east door in handcuffs. Watching them cuff my son felt like something I had no metaphor for. Just a father standing in a room full of cameras watching the consequence of choices made 42 years ago finally land. Vivian sat 3 rows back beside Serena. Her face was carefully neutral, but I saw her hands gripping the armrests hard enough that her knuckles went white. The agents walked Brent and Roxanne out. The door closed behind them. The room erupted in noise, shareholders talking over each other, press shouting questions, board members demanding explanations. I stepped away from the podium and walked out the back exit. 10 minutes later, I stood in the hallway outside the conference room. The building was nearly empty now. Most people had left to chase the story or call their lawyers or process what they had just witnessed. Vivian found me there. She didn't cry, didn't collapse, just stood in front of me with her back straight and her eyes clear. "Did you know I would lose everything?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Long silence. She processed that, understood what it meant. I had known that helping me would cost her parents her home, her family, as she had known it. And I had let her make that choice anyway. "I still did it," she said. I looked at her. Not as a test subject anymore. Not as a pawn or a tool or a variable in an equation. As an equal. "I know," I said. Another silence. Different this time. Understanding rather than evaluation. "Do you want dinner with me?" I asked. She nodded. We walked 3 blocks to a small diner. Vinyl booths, fluorescent lights. The kind of place where nobody asked questions and the coffee was always hot. Vivian ordered a burger and fries. I ordered black coffee. We didn't talk about the morning. Didn't discuss what had just happened. Didn't process or analyze or strategize. She ate slowly. I watched her become someone new in real time. Watched the girl who had lied to me 3 weeks ago transform into the young woman who had chosen integrity over family loyalty. No apologies, no celebration, just presence. "You want to talk about it?" I asked after she finished half the burger. "Not really," she said. "Good." She took another bite of burger, and I realized some moments don't need words. This was one. We sat there for 40 minutes. She ate. I drank coffee. Neither of us tried to fill the silence with explanations or justifications or plans for what came next. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones you don't have. She finished the last fry, wiped her hands on a paper napkin, looked at me with eyes that had lost their innocence but not their clarity. "What happens now?" she asked. I didn't have an answer yet. She had lost her parents to federal prison, lost the house she grew up in, lost the family structure she had known for 17 years. She had a scholarship from the foundation I had just created, but that was conditional on her working for it. Earning it. Nothing would be handed to her. She would have to build her own life from whatever pieces remained, just like I had built mine from $50 8 years ago. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but we'll figure it out." She nodded, stood up, put on her jacket. We walked out of the diner into the November afternoon. The sun was setting. The air was cool. Traffic hummed past on the street. Vivian stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at nothing in particular. Then she turned to me. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For letting me choose." She walked to her car and drove away. I stood there watching until her taillights disappeared around the corner. What happened next took time. Justice always does. The defense attorney asked me why I waited 8 years, and I told him the truth. because justice is not built in a day. December 18th, Houston Federal Courthouse. I sat on the witness stand for 90 minutes with my hand on a Bible I did not believe in anymore, swearing to tell truth I had spent 8 years documenting. Attorney Caldwell was a sharp-tongued woman in her 50s who specialized in white-collar crime. She stood across from me in an expensive suit and tried to make me look like the villain. "Mr. Mercer, you left your family for 8 years. Isn't this about revenge, not justice?" So I left because I had $50 and no legal standing, I said. I returned because I had evidence. What, 8 years is a long time to hold a grudge. It's also a long time to build a case. She walked me through every detail. Why I had not fought the eviction in court. Why I had not reported the fraud immediately. Why I had waited until November to reveal what I knew. I answered every question with the same calm precision I used to calculate bridge loads. No anger, no emotion, just facts. The jury watched. 12 people who would decide whether my son spent the next decade in prison. I looked at them and saw the same calculation I had made 8 years ago. Some structures need to collapse so better ones can be built. Attorney Caldwell pressed harder. You abandoned your family, your own son, your granddaughter. You disappeared without a word for 8 years while they struggled. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the letter. Yellowed paper, folded and refolded so many times the creases were wearing thin. My wife's handwriting. 3 months before she died. I placed it on the witness stand desk. My wife knew our son had problems before she passed, I said. She couldn't bear to say it. This is her letter, written 3 months before she died. She warned me. I just found it too late. I read it aloud. Every word. The courtroom went silent. I forgive her because she loved her son, I said when I finished. I cannot forgive him because he exploited that love for $2.3 million from 47 people who trusted him. The courtroom was silent for 11 seconds. I counted. Attorney Caldwell had no more questions. 3 days later, Judge Hargrove delivered the sentences. He was a stern man in his early 60s, known for harsh sentences in elder abuse cases. He looked at Brent and Roxanne sitting at the defense table and spoke with the kind of authority that comes from 20 years on the federal bench. Brent Mercer, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for wire fraud and elder financial abuse. No parole eligibility for 7 years. Brent stared at the floor. His hands were shaking. Roxanne Mercer, you are sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility for 7 years. Roxanne wept. Quietly. Her perfect composure finally broken. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. I sat in the gallery with my expression unchanged. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just the quiet acknowledgement that the structure I had built for 8 years had held exactly as designed. 2 weeks later, I visited Brent. Once, just once. Federal holding facility, glass partition, phones. The kind of place where fathers and sons who have destroyed each other sit on opposite sides of bulletproof glass and pretend they can still communicate. Brent picked up the phone. His prison jumpsuit was orange. His face was thinner. His eyes were different. No calculation left, just exhaustion. Dad, I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking. I'm not here to forgive you or punish you, I said. You did that yourself. He closed his eyes. Tears ran down his face. Real tears this time. Not the manufactured emotion from the phone call months ago. Just grief. Will I ever see you again? He asked. I did not answer. Instead, I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out the original $50 bill. The one Roxanne had slapped me with 8 years ago. The one I had carried in my toolbox beside my wife's letter. I slid it through the slot at the bottom of the glass partition. I kept this, I said. 8 years. Brent stared at the bill. This is what you gave me. You'll figure it out. He picked up the $50 bill with shaking hands. Looked at it like it was evidence from a crime scene, which I supposed it was. Dad, wait. I stood up, hung up the phone, turned toward the door. Walking away from that glass partition felt like closing the last door on a house I had demolished room by room. Painful, necessary, final. I did not look back. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for 10 minutes before starting the engine. Thought about the $50 bill now sitting in Brent's cell. Thought about my wife's letter tucked back in my jacket pocket. Thought about 8 years of carrying both of them like weapons I might need someday. That $50 bill had sat in my toolbox for 8 years beside my wife's letter. Both necessary. Both weapons. I had used them both, and now I had nothing left to carry. No anger, no grief, no desire for revenge or reconciliation. Just empty hands and the knowledge that some structures once demolished should not be rebuilt. Empty hands meant I could build something new. Vivian read the contract twice before looking up and asking the question I had been waiting for. Why won't you just give me the money? We sat in my office. December 28th. 3 weeks after the arrest. 2 weeks after I had visited Brent in prison. The contract sat on the desk between us, 3 pages of terms and conditions for the scholarship the $50 foundation would provide. Read it again, I said. Tell me what you see. She picked up the first page. Nadia, tuition covered. Room and board from your foundation salary. No other financial support from you. She turned to the second page. She 15 hours per week working at the foundation. Paid at market rate. Living expenses come from that salary, not from you. Third page. So no gifts, no loans, no financial assistance beyond tuition. She set the contract down and looked at me. This isn't a gift, she said. This is a job. Yes. Why I helped you. I risked everything. My parents are in prison because I gave you evidence. Why won't you just give me the money? I leaned back in my chair. Because I don't want you to become your father. Silence. The words landed like a hammer on concrete. That's harsh, she said finally. It's true. Brent grew up expecting things to be given to him. Every time he struggled, someone rescued him. Your grandmother. Me. When he made bad investments, we covered them. When his business failed the first time we rebuilt it. We taught him that money appears when you need it, not when you earn it. I gestured to the contract. This teaches you different. You want college work for it. You want living expenses, earn them. You want a future, build it yourself. Vivian stared at the contract for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. I understand, she said. She signed. 3 signatures, 3 initials. Folded the contract into her backpack and stood, extended her hand. We shook, firm, respectful, no sentimentality, no hug, no tears. Her handshake felt like the first bolt in a new structure, not the building, yet just the promise it might hold. Thank you, she said. Earn it, I said. I will. She walked out without another word. We were not at hugs yet. But we had reached a real handshake. Distance with dignity. That was enough. That evening, I met Floyd at the same coffee shop where he had given me $15,000 8 years ago. He sat in the same corner booth. I carried an envelope. "So 30,000, I said, sliding it across the scarred wooden table. Double what I borrowed. Floyd opened the envelope, counted the bills, looked up at me with something between amusement and exasperation. I could have waited longer, he said. You waited 8 years. That's enough. I didn't wait for repayment. I waited to see if you'd survive. I survived. More than that. You built. He put the envelope in his jacket pocket. Ordered 2 black coffees. We sat there drinking bad coffee just like we had 8 years ago when I had counted out my last $50 and his 15,000 and wondered if it would be enough to start over. Any regrets? Floyd asked. Regret it took 8 years, I said. No regrets about anything else. So 8 years is a long time to be angry. I wasn't angry the whole time. Anger is exhausting. I was patient. That's different. Floyd smiled. Fair distinction. We drank coffee in comfortable silence. Then Floyd asked the question I had not expected. Tell me about her. Not the letter. Her. I looked at him. He meant my wife. No one had asked me about her in 8 years. Not about the letter or the strategy or what she had known. Just about who she was. She made terrible lasagna, I said. Burned every time. 38 years of marriage and she never figured out how to cook lasagna without burning the edges. We ate it anyway. Floyd laughed. She believed in Brent longer than she should have. Mothers carry hope differently than fathers. She saw his potential when I saw his failures. She was right to hope. I was right to see. We were both right and both wrong. I talked for 2 hours. Told Floyd about her laugh. About how she organized the garage alphabetically even though I told her tools should be organized by function. About how she cried at every movie, even comedies. About how she held my hand during thunderstorms even though we were both 60 years old, and thunderstorms were not dangerous. No business, no strategy, no revenge. Just memory. Floyd listened, asked questions. Shared his own memories of her from before he retired. We drank coffee until 10 p.m. I realized I had not said her name out loud in 8 years until tonight. Oh, she would have been proud of you, Floyd said finally. And heartbroken, both. I know. You did the right thing, but it cost you. Everything costs something, I said. I chose what to pay for. We stood to leave. Floyd walked me to my truck in the parking lot. December air was cold. My breath made small clouds in the darkness. You okay? Floyd asked. Yes, I said. And for the first time since I walked out with $50 8 years ago, I meant it. The conversation I needed most after 8 years was not about revenge or justice or whether my plan had worked. It was about remembering her. Not as the woman who wrote a warning letter. Not as the mother who enabled our son's destruction. Just as the woman who made terrible lasagna and held my hand during storms. Some grief cannot be weaponized. It can only be shared. Some conversations change you. That one with Floyd changed me back to the man who had loved her before everything fell apart. I hung the $50 bill in a glass frame on the wall and realized it looked different now. Not like evidence, but like a beginning. January 11th. The $50 foundation opened in a small downtown office. 2 rooms, 4 desks. Windows that looked out onto Houston traffic. Nothing fancy. Nothing designed to impress. 20 people came to the opening. Vivian, Floyd, Preston, a few board members. No press. No cameras, no speeches about revenge or justice or 8-year plans. I placed the framed $50 bill on the wall. Beside it, a photo of my wife. The 2 things that had carried me through 8 years. One reminded me of what I lost. The other reminded me of why I kept going. This is where it started, I said to the small crowd. $50 and nothing else. I pointed to the empty desks, the filing cabinets waiting to be filled, the phone lines that would soon connect people who needed help to people who could provide it. Now it's where other people start too. That was the whole speech. 30 seconds. Then I stepped back and let people explore the space. Vivian stood in front of the framed $50 bill for a long time. Beneath it, a small brass plaque with an engraved message. She read it aloud. For those left behind with nothing, you will figure it out, and so will we. Her voice was steady. No trembling. No uncertainty. She had crossed a threshold in the months since November and stayed on the other side. Is that a promise or a warning? She asked. Both, I said. She smiled. Not the practiced smile from the first office visit. Not the nervous smile from the coffee shop. A real smile. The first one I had seen from her. After the others left, Vivian stayed behind. Walked around the empty office, running her hand along the desk surfaces, looking at the wall where case files would soon hang. What was she like? She asked. Grandmother. Not about the inheritance. Not about the letter. Not about what she knew or when she knew it. Just about who she was. Like you, I said, but more stubborn. Vivian laughed. That's saying something. She would have liked you. The you that you're becoming. Not the me I was 3 months ago. That girl was doing what she thought she had to do. This woman is doing what she chooses to do. Your grandmother would recognize the difference. Vivian nodded, looked at the photo on the wall for another moment. Then she left. I stood alone in the foundation office for 10 more minutes. Looked at the $50 bill in its frame. Looked at my wife's photo. Looked at the brass plaque that would greet every person who walked through that door looking for help. For those left behind with nothing. I had been one of them. Now I was building a place for the others. 3 days later, I stood on a bridge construction site at 7:30 in the morning. New overpass project. Contract I had bid on 6 months ago and won on merit. Young engineers crawling over steel beams, measuring tolerances, calculating loads, building something that would carry traffic for the next 50 years. I watched them work. Did not need to direct anymore. Did not need to supervise. Just watched. One engineer could not have been older than 25, called out to his partner. Load-bearing capacity looks good. Foundation's solid. The partner called back. Standing on that bridge foundation, I understood revenge is demolition, but justice is what you pour in the hole after. I had spent 8 years tearing down what Brent and Roxanne built on lies. That was necessary. But the real work was not the tearing down. It was what I built in the empty space. The foundation, the scholarship for Vivian, the conversation with Floyd about my wife, the choice to frame the $50 bill not as a weapon, but as a beginning. I pulled out my phone and texted Vivian, "Yo, are you free this weekend? Want to teach you structural blueprints." 3 minutes passed. Then her reply appeared. "Choka, if you teach blueprints, do I need more math?" I smiled at my phone. "Yes." "Oh, can you teach that too?" "I can. That's the next story." I put the phone back in my pocket and stood there watching the young engineers build. They did not know my story. Did not know about the $50 or the 8 years or the son in federal prison. They just knew I was a contractor who won bids and built structures that did not fail. That was enough. That evening, I sat at my office desk. The same desk where Vivian's phone call had come 3 months ago. The same desk where I had planned the November 15th announcement. The same desk where I had spent 8 years building a structure designed to collapse what my son had built on fraud. I opened my journal, wrote the final entry. The worst day was not losing my home. It was realizing the person I trusted most did not believe in me. The best day was not watching them get arrested. It was when my 17-year-old granddaughter asked me to teach her blueprints. That day I knew what I built was not a company. It was a future. I sat at the same desk where her midnight call started everything and realized I was not angry anymore. No rage, no desire for revenge, no need to prove anything to anyone. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had built something that would last longer than my grief. I closed the journal and looked at the framed photo on my desk. Not the one in the foundation office, but a different one, my wife holding infant Brent, both smiling. 39 years ago, before everything fell apart, before the lies and the theft and the 8 years of rebuilding, I still keep it. Forgiveness is not required for building the future, but memory is. Some structures need to fall, others need to rise. And sometimes the same hands that tear down can also build up. I built bridges for 46 years. Now I was building something different. Not concrete and steel, just a place where people left behind with nothing could start over. Just like I did. With $50 and the knowledge that some things once demolished leave space for better things to grow. And to everyone who stayed with me until the end, remember this. The people who share your blood are not always the ones who protect your legacy. Looking back, my greatest mistake was believing that family alone was enough. I thought my son would protect everything I built because I spent my entire life protecting him. I ignored the warning signs. I ignored the questions about my finances, the pressure to sign documents, and the way some people only came back when they realized what I had achieved. I believed love meant trust without limits. I was wrong. But this journey taught me something important. Family justice is not about destroying the people who hurt you. It is about standing up for the truth, protecting what you built, and refusing to let manipulation erase your sacrifices. The strongest foundation is not made from money or success. It is built from honesty, loyalty, and character. I also learned that forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. You can love someone and still hold them accountable for their choices. A person's legacy is not measured by what they leave behind, but by the values they refuse to abandon. I believe God gave me the strength to survive those 8 years for a reason. Maybe my story was meant to remind someone that betrayal does not have to be the end of your life. Sometimes losing everything is the moment you discover what you are truly made of. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone you trusted disappointed you? What would you have done in my place? If you enjoy powerful family justice stories and dad revenge stories that carry real lessons, subscribe to Wise Revenge for more unforgettable journeys. Thank you for watching until the very end. Some details in this story have been changed for storytelling purposes, but the message remains the same. Protect your legacy, value truth, and never let betrayal define who you are.